I didn't sit down to make a prequels versus sequels comparison video. Honestly, it wasn't even on my mind. I wasn't trying to spark a trilogy war or relitigate the last 15 years of Star Wars discourse, or join the endless YouTube ecosystem of why this trilogy is actually bad content. No, I really just wanted to review the prequel trilogy for what it is. The movies themselves. Not the memes, not the nostalgia, not the Clone Wars cartoon, not the online culture that has rewritten history around them. But here's the thing. The moment you talk honestly about the prequels, the sequel trilogy shadow enters the room every single time. There's this bizarre internet narrative that the sequels are so bad that they somehow made the prequels better. That somehow, retroactively, The Phantom Menace became a misunderstood masterpiece because the Rise of Skywalker exists. That Jar Jar is secretly brilliant because Rey healed a giant sandworm. And here's the problem. None of it is true.
I love you!
Liar!
The sequels don't magically fix the prequels. They didn't retroactively make these movies coherent, well acted, or well written. And saying the prequels have flaws is not a hot take. It shouldn't be a hot take. It should be the most obvious, elementary observation in the world. But in 2025, apparently admitting the prequels aren't perfect is the new controversial opinion. So this is my review of the Star Wars prequel trilogy. The good, the bad, the baffling, and along the way, I want to show that the sequels are at least as good as these movies in many ways, and in several areas, objectively better. Not perfect, not flawless, but not the dumpster fire that the internet revisionist history wants them to be. Let's begin with the movie that started it all, or technically, started it before it all. The Phantom Menace begins with a crawl that is confusing, boring, and somehow both over-explained and under-explained. Remember, Star Wars is supposed to be a story for 12-year-olds. This is the franchise known for simple, mythic storytelling. Clear heroes, clear villains, clear stakes. But in this crawl, we're thrown into a trade dispute, taxations, bureaucratic blockades, commercial interests, none of which means anything to children, and honestly, not a whole lot more to adults. And I realized something as I rewatched this movie. When I was a kid, I had no idea what the plot was. Like, none. I understood Luke's story, I understood Rey's story, I understood Finn and Poe and Kylo. Love them or hate them, you know what these movies are about. But I could not tell you, then or now, what the central conflict of this movie is, beyond something about taxes. Who are the villains? The Trade Federation? The Separatists? The Battle Droids? Why are they bad? What makes them bad besides the movie telling us that Jedis are good and the Jedi say that they are bad? And it doesn't help that the droid army is played for slapstick comedy. When the first villain force we see in this movie is a group of goofy robots who sound like rejected SpongeBob characters, your sense of danger evaporates immediately. I know that Jar Jar is the internet's favorite punching bag, but here's something people rarely admit. He is literally the only character showing emotion. Scenes without him would become flat, cold, and stoic. And yes, I grew up thinking he was speaking total gibberish. Turns out he was speaking English the whole time.
My no. Miss a day starting pretty okie day with the brisky morning munching, then...
Closed captions revealed that to me. But as a kid, not a clue. And that matters because clarity is the foundation of storytelling. A lot of people criticize The Last Jedi for its humor and tonal issues, but at least the comedic characters weren't the center of attention. Here, Jar Jar is the center of the emotional expression. This movie contains some of the strangest, least human dialogue in the franchise.
Are you an angel?
What? You're a slave?
I'm a person.
Who talks like that? Even by mythic standards, it's bizarre. And Obi-Wan Kenobi, one of the most iconic characters in the entire saga, is sidelined. He spends half the movie on the ship like a glorified extra. It feels genuinely like the script was rewritten mid-production to turn Qui-Gon into the protagonist because Liam Neeson was casted. And that's fine, actors change scripts, and if people criticize sequel rewrites, we have to acknowledge that The Phantom Menace clearly did the same thing. One of the biggest complaints about the sequels is how they ruin the mysteries of the Force, but midichlorians? Those things took the mysticism of the Force and turned it into a blood test. Somehow that gets a free pass now. The pod race is fun, thrilling, and one of the few times the movie feels alive. Compare that to the underwater fish chase, which lasts about 10 seconds and ends with everyone acting like it was no big deal, except Jar Jar, once again being the only person responding emotionally. And this one is going to piss some people off, but it's true. Anakin is written exactly like the people accuse Rey of being, except worse. He wins a pod race humans supposedly cannot win, accidentally flies a fighter, accidentally blows up a battleship, accidentally wins a war. He's the chosen one, and is the highest midichlorian count ever, all at the age of 9. If Rey being powerful is a Mary Sue, then what is Anakin? A Mega Sue? A mythical Sue? The chosen one explanation is fine, but by that logic, if the sequel simply had one prophecy line about Rey, would that have magically satisfied everyone? Or is it because she's a girl? These are honest questions. The Naboo starfighters look painfully out of place in Star Wars, overly shiny and clean in a way that just doesn't match the Star Wars aesthetics. The movie is loaded with CGI environments that age worse every year. Qui-Gon dies, leaving no clear lead character. Darth Maul died after being the coolest thing in the movie. And the high ground moment people meme now is nothing compared to what happens years later. It's over, Anakin, I have the high ground. Or not. Never mind. Doesn't matter in this movie. 3 out of 10. Not a good movie, not a good Star Wars experience, and absolutely skippable. Attack of the Clones begins with Padme arriving with yet another decoy, raising the question, how many stunt doubles does she actually have? Do they volunteer knowing that they're probably gonna die for this woman? The movie tells us that Obi-Wan and Anakin are best friends. Constantly. Obi-Wan says it, Anakin says it, other characters say it, but we only get one single scene of them actually acting like friends. The speeder chase hangout banter moment. It's fun, but it's the only example the trilogy gives us. It's a classic case of tell, don't show. The sequels, for all their flaws, absolutely show relationships. Finn and Poe have chemistry immediately. Rey and Kylo's connection is shown, not told. Rey and Finn's bond is forged through a shared struggle. The prequels don't demonstrate Anakin and Obi-Wan chemistry until it's too late. I know this has been pointed out by a million different people, but this is the absolute worst assassination plot ever. Palpatine hires a bounty hunter, who hires another bounty hunter, who uses a droid, who delivers bugs to kill Padme, and it still fails. This chain of subcontractors feels like a parody. Why is Zom a shapeshifter when the ability never matters? Why is it mentioned but absolutely never comes into play? Anakin in this movie does not behave like child Anakin from the last movie, and he absolutely does not behave like Clone Wars Anakin. He barely behaves like the Revenge of the Sith Anakin. It's like there are 3 different Anakins being written by 3 unrelated writers. That's why the Clone Wars cartoon had to work overtime to make him likable. Obi-Wan discovers that the clones were based on Jango Fett, the same guy who tried to kill Padme, and his reaction is basically interesting. Even after learning Jango was hired by a fallen Jedi, he doesn't question why a massive army was secretly made. Even Yoda comments that the Jedi were just blind to not have noticed any of this. Romance is the worst in the franchise. Anakin speaks like a malfunctioning poetry generator.
It's coarse, rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere.
Padme falls in love anyway. Why, when, how, it's another tell, don't show situation. Compare this to the sequel trilogy, where Finn and Rey grow naturally. Rey and Ben have an actual emotional conflict. Even Poe and Rey have a believable tension. Count Dooku should have been this trilogy's main villain from the beginning. A fallen Jedi with ideological motives is infinitely more interesting than a trade blockade, and yet he barely appears. He disappears until the next movie where he's killed immediately. The visuals in this movie is utter chaos. The arena fight is a mess, CGI everywhere, characters reacting to things that weren't even there during filming. Samuel L. Jackson requested a purple lightsaber just so he could see himself. That's not a good sign. Then there's Yoda versus Dooku. And as a kid, this was awesome, but as an adult, it looks ridiculous. Whirling green and blue, zero weight. Compare this to the sequel trilogy's slower, heavy, and more emotional choreography. That had impact. This looks like two rubber toys being slammed together. Also, Yoda loses, badly. Twice in this trilogy, yet in the next movie he suddenly retires because of his failure. Make that make sense that he loses here and is fine with it. 5 out of 10, not terrible, decent in parts, but deeply flawed. Revenge of the Sith arrives with a mountain of responsibility. The entire trilogy has been promising the story of Darth Vader's fall, but the first 2 movies barely set that up, so now everything has to be done in one film. This trilogy is famous for people sitting while delivering very crucial dialogue. There's an incredible red letter media breakdown of this, so if you want to watch it after this video, I highly recommend it. But finish watching this one first, because it's not just awkward, it kills the pacing. Important emotional scenes are delivered like therapy sessions. The opening sequence of this movie is energetic and fun. It's the first time the trilogy feels like it's delivering on its promise. Anakin's ethical struggles are very inconsistently written. He hesitates to kill Dooku, yet in the previous films, Jedi slaughter people all the time. The movies want us to believe that this is a moral turning point, but the previous films contradict it. General Grievous is a cool concept, executed strangely. Better than Dooku's handling, worse than Darth Maul's. He acts like a Jedi despite not being one. It's an interesting topic. There's a lot more telling and not showing in this. Characters constantly say things like, "We were great friends," "You've grown strong," "The war is nearing its end," but we rarely see these things demonstrated visually or emotionally. There's a lot of awkward romance continuing in this movie. The Anakin and Padme scenes are slightly better but still uncomfortable. There's an entire romance scene, then it's immediately followed by a second romance scene containing these exact same 2 characters. Yoda tells Anakin, who is terrified for Padme's life, to just let go of everything. He's not helpful. He's not compassionate. He's not the Jedi we were told to admire. Speaking of Anakin, Anakin just can't keep secrets in this movie. He's told to spy on Palpatine and then immediately tells Palpatine. Then Palpatine tells him that he knows about the dark side, so Anakin tells the Jedi. If he's told anything, he immediately tells someone else. Meanwhile, Finn in the sequels has a secret he never tells anyone, not even us. Okay, that's a low blow and a very low bar, but you get the point. Fan service in this movie is all over the place. Like, Chewbacca knows Yoda? Why? This reveal adds nothing except weird implications. Like, why did Chewie never mention Yoda to Luke later? It feels like a forced fan service. There's this scene where Obi-Wan drops into the middle of a droid circle and just says, "Hello there." Very iconic scene, but not a single droid fires. This is the character in the last movie that was lecturing Anakin about thinking before doing. And this was his idea. He couldn't just wait for a backup. The backup was like 15 seconds away. Also, Obi-Wan lectures Anakin in the last movie about losing his lightsaber. He says it's the life of a Jedi. But Obi-Wan loses his lightsaber in all 3 of these movies. Here's a really popular one that everyone likes to point out. Anakin tells Mace Windu that Palpatine is a Sith Lord, and Mace reacts with the energy of someone hearing that they left their garage door open. They just kind of trot along from one side of the scene to the next. I'm not sure how I feel about Palpatine's lightsaber ballet. Like, did we really need to see him flipping like Yoda? The sequels often get mocked for old people using lightsabers, but the prequels forced it too, and badly. Anakin's turn happens just too fast. The trilogy wants him conflicted, like a slow burn, but once he sides with Palpatine even slightly, he goes full monster immediately, kills children, and tries to murder Obi-Wan. It's less of a fall to the dark side and more of a falls off a cliff. However, Order 66 is still powerful, still emotional, and surrounded by a story that never fully earns its tragedy. The biggest flaw of this film is that it tries to wrap everything up in a nice little bow. It tries to end in a status quo. Padme dies of a broken heart because she's not in the original trilogy. Leia is handed to Bail, Luke is handed to Owens and Beru, Obi-Wan goes into hiding for some reason, Yoda goes into hiding because he barely lost to Palpatine, and Vader is created. It's all wrapped up instantly instead of allowing a decade of evolution to possibly bridge these gaps. Another 5 out of 10. Fun moments, iconic ending, but deeply uneven. The pretty great ending to this movie had a lot of people convinced that this movie was a lot better than it really was. I've watched these movies maybe 4 times my entire life, and revisiting them didn't change my perspective. I'm still a Star Wars fan, I still love the galaxy, the lore, the aesthetics, the mythology, but I don't love these movies. They're not misunderstood masterpieces, they're deeply flawed, occasionally brilliant, often messy, inconsistent space operas that we remember more fondly because we were kids, the memes are funny, the sequels exist for some reason, and the Clone Wars cartoon worked miracles to patch up the holes. And that's the key point. The sequels didn't make the prequels better, they just reminded people that every trilogy has flaws. If anything, the sequels exposed how much people were willing to overlook in the prequels, because the moment a woman picked up a lightsaber, suddenly we needed to re-examine what counts as a Mary Sue. It's funny how that works. I went into the sequel trilogy with high hopes. Disney had money, the talent, the filmmaking expertise, and despite everything people say, those movies have better acting, more natural dialogue, clearer character motivations, more defined emotional arcs, fewer tonal inconsistencies, practical effects that create believable worlds, and character relationships that are shown, not told. They're not perfect films, but they're not disasters. My overall point, the prequels don't stop being flawed because the sequels exist. Stay tuned for my finale where I review the sequel trilogy in detail and rank every movie in the Skywalker saga. Also, these videos get flagged constantly, especially anything involving Disney. So if you want to support the channel, consider joining my Patreon. Like and subscribe, you know, the usual drill.